Okay, so it's the last day of the month. I am going to continue reading where I left off from last time, and if I don't make it in 30 minutes, I'm going to make this a two-parter. We still have one chapter left to go, and I'm learning so much about it, so let's get started. The Mountain is You by Brianna Wiest. We're talking about releasing your past into the quantum field. So, first, identify what caused the traumatic experience. You do this by feeling into yourself and noticing where you are tight or tense. Our bodies harden to protect us. When we have a broken leg, our fascia tightens like a natural cast so that we do not bend ourselves that way again. Similarly, when our hearts are broken, our emotions tighten so that we do not let ourselves feel again. Of course, eventually we have to talk. We have to walk. We have to love. We have to experience life again. We have to slowly soften the pieces of us that are trying to protect us so that we can move forward. Healing trauma is not just a matter of psychoanalyzing it. It is a matter of literally working through it physically. The next time you feel yourself overreacting to some kind of stimulus, you will notice that your body is starting to tense up and create a fight or flight response. To heal this, you have to force yourself to take a deep, soothing breaths until the part of your body that was once tense is relaxed again. You will need to self-soothe in different ways. Meditating, breathing, drinking enough water, getting enough sleep, using aromatherapy, sound therapy, or whatever else works for you. You absolutely must work to take your brain and body physically out of panic or survival mode. I'm going to highlight that real quick. That's a pretty dark highlighter. I'm going to get the lighter one next time. This one. Second, reinstate a sense of safety. You are traumatized because of something scared you, and you are convinced that it is still out to get you. This is what happens when we don't face or overcome something difficult. We assume the threat lingers indefinitely. The psychological aspect of trauma healing is that you have to literally restore the connection that was severed in the exact same way that it was broken. If you are traumatized about relationships, you need to build healthy relationships. If you are traumatized about money, you need to get really good with money. If you're traumatized with traveling, you need to travel again. That's good advice. I'm going to highlight that. We do not find the resolution in avoiding these things forever. In fact, just underneath the fear, we often find that there are things we really want more than anything else. Third, stop taking thoughts and feelings at face value. Last, to overcome trauma, you have to stop engaging in psychic thinking. You have to stop pretending you were able to predict what will happen, that you know other people's intentions, or that what you feel and think is absolutely truth and reality. This kind of thinking is what takes a triggering feeling and turns it into a defeating spiral. You take one scary thing and make it into a prediction for what the future will hold. You are not an oracle. You do not know what's next, though you are always capable of choosing what you do now. Almost always, the thing you are most panicked about is the thing you do not know is happening for sure. It is usually an assumption, a projection, a fear turned into a terrifying potential reality. You might think that trauma is something that other, more damaged people have, but that is not true. Everyone is traumatized in one way or another, but it is how we respond to it, how we ultimately grow and develop mastery from it, that determines the course of our lives. Next, becoming the most powerful version of yourself. Are you being the most powerful version of yourself? If you had to pause to think about it, the answer is probably no. Everybody has different facets of their personality, and we act on them based on the context we're in. It's a social adaptation tool. You are not the same person with your friends as you are with your parents. Moving through these easily is a sign of high psychological function. We are acquainted with the versions of ourselves that our current life requires. We know who we need to be at work, at home, or in love. but we are often unfamiliar with the person we need to be in order to move forward, in order to move our lives forward. In inner child work, you visualize and address your younger selves, often down to a specific age, depending on which version of you was traumatized. You communicate with that inner child self, learn from them, protect them, or give them the guidance that they needed when they were young. This proves to be profoundly healing for people, mostly because we do not evolve past our former selves, we simply grow upon them. However, this practice can work the opposite way as well. You can also visualize and connect with your future self, the version of you that you're growing into, or the person you know you are meant to be. What would my most powerful self do today? The first step to becoming your most powerful self is to literally envision that person. Don't take yourself out of your current context either. Begin to ask yourself, what would the most powerful version of me do right now? What would they do with this day? How would they respond to this challenge? How would they move forward? How would they think? How would they feel? Your most powerful self needs to be the CEO of your life. It is the person making managerial decisions, governing everything else. This is the editor in chief, the matriarch or patriarch. You're working for your most powerful self. Once you have a clearer image of what your most powerful self is like, you then need to evaluate what habits, traits, and behaviors are actively holding you back from fully embodying that person. Be aware of your weakness. Powerful people are not delusional. They do not believe they are perfect all the time at everything. This is not what makes them mentally strong. Instead, powerful people are very aware of their varying strengths and weaknesses. In business, powerful people will often outsource the tasks at which they are less skilled. In life, powerful people know where their limits are and what their triggers might be. This allows them to move through their lives with more ease and to give themselves the time and space needed to work on their faults. The ability to say to yourself, I know I struggle a lot with this, so I'm going to take my time and work on it, is one of the most powerful things you can do. Willing to be disliked. Powerful people are not the ones who are most universally liked. They are also not the ones vying for others' approval, and that's the key. Okay, I'm gonna highlight that one. To be a truly powerful person, you must be willing to be disliked. This is not to say that you behave in any way that is malicious, but it is to say that no matter what you do, others are going to judge you. Powerful people know this. There is no path in life that you can take that will be free of resistance from others, and so it is important that you not only become okay with being disliked, but you anticipate it and act anyway. Act on purpose. Powerful and purposeful are one and the same. To be a truly powerful person, you need to have a complete, unwavering conviction about what you want to create. To do this, you have to shift from a live for a moment to live for the legacy mindset. Your purpose is a dynamic, evolving thing. Most of the time, it is the intersection of what you are interested in, what you are good at, and what the world needs. Having a clear vision of what you want to create and accomplish is essential to finding your inner power. You will not feel strongly about a dream that is not part of who you most essentially are. Do your inner work. This is perhaps the most important and yet most commonly overlooked because it is the least comfortable. To do your inner work means to evaluate why something triggered you, why something is upsetting you, what your life is trying to show you, and the ways you could grow from these experiences. Truly powerful people absorb what has happened to them and sort of metabolize it. They use it as an opportunity to learn, to develop themselves. This type of inner mental and emotional work is non negotiable if you want to be truly powerful. Powerful people are not the most aggressive. Aggression is usually a self defense mechanism. Powerful people are the ones most unfazed by small disturbances and most willing to fully process and work through the big ones. Of course, this is the foundational stuff. Next, you have to work on simplifying your life, talking less about your ambitions, and showing more of your accomplishments once they are completed. Gradually, make health improvements. Assume that everyone and everything has something to teach you. Become comfortable with vulnerability, as the vulnerability precedes almost every significant part of your life, and intentionally design your daily routine. Through everything, you must be thinking as your most powerful self would. If you learn to see the world and your life through that lens, you can create a life that reflects the intentions of that side of you. It already exists. You just need to know how to tap into it. Learning to validate your feelings. If we want to be effective in therapy, in politics, in relationships, in teaching kids, in talking to someone down from the edge, in keeping peace, making friends, fostering connection, and making progress, there's one technique we have to employ first. It's a little secret, and it's one that requires very little effort, but it disarms people. It opens them, makes them receptive, willing to listen and adapt. It is healing, it is mind altering, but most importantly, it's the first step to progress. It's emotional validation. Validating someone's feeling doesn't mean you agree with them. It doesn't mean you concede that they are correct. It doesn't mean that those feelings are the healthiest. It doesn't mean they are informed by logic. Validating feelings doesn't mean you make them more true. It means you remind someone that it is human to feel things they don't always understand. How often do we just need a partner to stop trying to strategize and just say, that must really suck? How much of a weight is lifted off our shoulders when we think, yes, I really am stressed right now, and I deserve to be? How light do we feel when we see another person's story splayed out across the screen, one that we can relate to and understand no matter how devastating it is? How much better do we feel when we simply allow ourselves to be aggrieved and pissed off and irrationally mad? When we let ourselves have it, the feeling that is something incredible happens. We no longer have to take it out on other people because we are no longer relying on their validation to get us through it. We can be aggrieved and pissed and mad and do our own processing without hurting anyone else. When people are crying out or acting out in their lives, they aren't just asking for help. They are most often just asking for someone to affirm that it is okay to feel the way that they do. And if they have to inflate and exaggerate circumstances for you to truly feel the weight and impact that they'll do it. They'll do whatever it takes to get someone else to say, I am sorry for what you are going through. It is not because they are incompetent or dumb. It is because in a world that does not teach us how to adequately process our own feelings, we must often rely solely on our maladaptive coping mechanisms. When we cannot validate our own feelings, we go on a never ending quest to try to force others to do it for us, but it never works. We never really get what we need. This looks like needing attention, affirmation, compliments, but it also looks like being dramatic, negative, and focusing disproportionately on what's wrong in our lives. That's what's happening to me. When someone is complaining about something simple, and they seem to be doing it more than the given situation would call for, they aren't trying to get your help about the small issue. They are trying to have their feelings validated. This is also a common root of self-sabotaging behaviors. Sometimes, when we have deep wells of grief within us, we absolutely cannot allow ourselves to relax and enjoy our lives and relationships. We cannot just have fun because doing so feels like a betrayal. It feels offensive. We need to feel validated, but we don't even know why. Why is this effective? Think of your feelings like water running through ducts in your body. Your thoughts determine whether or not the ducts are clean. The cleanliness of the ducts determine the quality of the water. If you suddenly have a feeling that you dislike and don't expect, a sudden rush of water, let's say, it's common to want to shut that valve off and not allow it to pass. However, stopping the flow of water does not make the water go away. Instead, it begins to intensely pressurize and create serious damage to the parts of your body that are no longer receiving flow. This begins to have a ripple effect on your entire life. Sometimes the water disperses itself gradually. Other times it implodes and creates what we see on the surface as a complete emotional breakdown. When all of that water finally comes through and we grieve and cry and fall apart, we are going through a process of being reset. It is positive disintegration. We are gutted, but at the same time, we feel better when it's over. Okay. Positive disintegration. All that happened in that implosion was that your feelings become validated when you gave yourself permission to feel them because you had no other choice. This is what we do in therapy. This is what we do when we vent. This is what happens when we experience a catharsis. A sad movie that we kind of enjoy being sad about allows us to feel sad in a world that otherwise does not. But there's a healthier, easier way, which is learning how to process our feelings in real time. Validating your feelings sounds like a big term, but it really means one thing. It's just letting yourself have them. When you are healing past trauma, often a big component is allowing yourself to experience the full expression of an emotion. You have probably done this in the past. Think about the passing of a relative whom you loved but were not overly attached to. When you learned of their death, you were undoubtedly sad, but you didn't attend their funeral, cry for an hour, and then carry on with your life as though nothing happened. Instead, you probably experienced a bout of sadness then, and then maybe the next day, and then maybe a week later. The waves of grief came and went in varying intensity. When you didn't resist them, you cried and felt sad, or maybe took a nap, a hot bath, or a day off from work. And then, without much effort from you, the feeling passed and you felt better. Once we have and acknowledge an emotion, it will often go away on its own. If there's no course of action to take, if all we really need to do is accept it, then we just have to let ourselves be there. The reason we don't do this more naturally is because obviously we can't burst into tears at our desks every time we feel bothered by something. Kinda do. Turning off the water valve is perfectly fine as long as we can go home and let it out later. It is okay to control when and where we process, and in fact, it's better when we learn to do it in a more stable and safe space. This can look like taking a few minutes to junk journal each day, spending time by ourselves, where we can simply experience how we feel without judgment and without trying to change them. It can be as simple as allowing ourselves to cry before we fall asleep. We often think of that as a sign of weakness, when really the ability to cry freely is a huge signal of mental and emotional strength. That's a pretty good one. It's when we can't cry about what's truly broken in our lives that we have a big problem. Validating the way someone else feels is an exercise in radial empathy. It is starting the conversation with, "It is okay to feel this way." Because when we point out how wrong someone is to feel the way they do, they shut down. And they shut down because they feel shame. They already know it's not right to feel the way they do. If you start the conversation by heightening someone's defenses or making them panic and suppress them even harder, you make the situation worse. But if you start with reminding them that anyone in their situation would probably feel similar, probably feel similar to how they do right now. Okay, I'll start over. But if you start with reminding them that anyone in their situation would probably feel similar to how they do right now, and that is very possible that they have a strong, overwhelming emotions that don't necessarily mean their lives are completely ruined, and that it's okay to feel devastated when devastating things are before us, we lighten their load. That's a terrible sentence. It's just full of commas. I hate that. And that's like the whole paragraph, too. We know this because when we stop resisting feeling sad and just let ourselves be sad, we realize that it will not last forever. We see that sometimes the biggest problem isn't that we are devastated, but that in refusing to accept what is in front of us, we create so much more suffering than we would if we had just had a cry when we needed to have a really good cry. Validating other people teaches us to validate ourselves, and when we learn how to validate ourselves, we become stronger. We see that our emotions are no longer threats but informants. They show us what we care about, what we want to savor, and what we want to protect. They remind us that life is fleeting and challenging and gorgeous. When we are willing to accept the darkness, it is only then that we find the light. Adopting your own principles. If you feel lost or as though you don't know where you want your life to go next, or worse, fear that everything you have built can come crashing down, you don't need more inspiration. You don't need more positive thinking. When you have money problems, you need money principles. When you have relationship problems, you need relationship principles. When you have work problems, you need work principles. When you have life problems, you need life principles. More money does not solve money problems. Different relationships do not solve relationship problems. New work does not solve work problems. Your future life will not solve your life problems. This is because money does not make you good with money. Love does not make you love yourself. Relationships don't make you good at relationships. Work doesn't make you good at your job or capable work-life balance. Problems don't inherently make you a stronger person unless you change and adapt. The variable here is you. The common denominator is whether or not you shift your foundational perspective on the world and how you behave within it. So let's be very clear. Someone who makes $500,000 can be seriously in debt and struggling as someone who makes $50,000. And in fact, this happens more often than you would ever think. People who make less money are required to learn how to manage it better. And people who make more think they can eschew principles because of the quantity they are attaining. That's a word I've seen before, but I don't know the meaning of eschew. ESCHEW. I'll see it later. You can screw up your dream relationship just as quickly as you can hook up. Because the way you relate to others is an issue with you. It's an issue with you, not something that shifts depending on whether or not you meet the most perfect person who never triggers or annoys you and relates to you with unconditional positive regard. You can be just as unhappy in your ideal job with your perfect hours at your most desired pay rate if you don't know how to ration your time, relate to others in your workplace, or move your career forward. People who are living their dreams and following their passion can be just as unhappy as people who are not. If you don't have principles, your life is not going to get better. Problems are only going to follow you and get bigger as your life does. The good things that happen to us in life are like a magnifier. They show us where we still need to grow. True love shows us to ourselves. True love shows us to ourselves. Money shows us to ourselves. Dream job shows us to ourselves. The good, the bad, and the desperately needs to change right now. If you don't have principles now, you won't have them later. I'm going to highlight that now. If you don't have the money principle of living beneath your means, you won't be able to do it when you have more money. If you don't have the relationship principle of not relying on others for your sense of self, it won't magically resolve itself when you meet the right person. You will only sabotage that relationship too. What is principle? A principle is a fundamental truth that you can use to build the foundation of your life. A principle is not an opinion or a belief. A principle is a matter of cause and effect. Principles can be personal guidelines. Some examples of money principles are the following. keep overhead costs low, get out and stay out of debt, live beneath your means, or save for a rainy day. Many financial experts advocate prioritizing debt repayment as the beginning of financial health. This is because one day of accrued interest probably won't impact you that much, but 20 years will, to the tune of tens of thousands of dollars, if not more. In the same way, one day of gain interest in investments won't make a big difference, but 20 years will, to an even more significant margin. Most things in our lives are governed by principles. Stephen Covey explains this well. Principles are a natural law like gravity. It's different than a value. Values are subjective. Principles are objective. We control our actions, but the consequences that flow from those actions are controlled by principles, he says. This means that if we are committed to the principle of eating good food each day, we will inevitably reap the benefit of better or improved health. If we write a sentence each day for many, many years, we will inevitably write a larger piece of work. If we commit to paying off a portion of our debts each month, we will inevitably clear our balance. If we invest consistently, that's wrong. Just because you pay every time doesn't mean that you would actually clear your debt. You would most likely have a huge interest at the end, and that's not really gonna help you financially. Your credit score is gonna be low if you don't pay in full, or you just don't even meet the minimum payment. So yeah, that's a problematic wording. So repeating that, if we commit to paying off a portion of our debts each month, we will inevitably clear our balance. If we invest consistently and wisely, we will eventually see a return. Our lives are governed by principles, as Benjamin Hardy explains. Most people cram for tests while in college, but can you cram if you're a farmer? Can you forget to plant in the spring, slack off all summer, and then work hard during the fall? Of course not. A farm is a natural system governed by principles. So are you. The law of the harvest is always in effect. What you plant, you must harvest. Furthermore, what you plant consistently over time eventually yields a compounded or exponential harvest. You often don't experience the consequences of your actions immediately, which can be deceiving. If you smoked one cigarette, you probably wouldn't get cancer. If you spent $10 on coffee just one day, it probably wouldn't affect your financial life. However, these habits have drastic outcomes. It turns out that $10 daily over 50 years at 5% compounding interest becomes $816,000. When you make an investment, you don't expect to see a return that day. The same way, you can go to sleep feeling accomplished, knowing that you chipped away at your future just by adhering to your principles. Little things done repeatedly and over time become big things. Why is this inspiration ineffective here? Inspiration can be misleading. Big dreams not backed by strategic plans are big flops waiting to happen. Inspiration means you take a feeling and elaborate on it. You allow your mind to wander, you piece together pretty pictures and create an image of how you'd like your life to feel. Principles are boring, they aren't inspiring, they are laws of nature. Principles are not immediately gratifying, they do not make us feel better right away. That's why we often reach for inspiration but find it to be ineffective. This is because we get our minds and hearts set on a vague idea of what we think we want without ever really evaluating whether or not we want to engage in the daily work and effort it would take to get there. When we don't pair inspiration with the principles it takes to achieve those dreams, we become more lost and disappointed than ever before. Okay, so I'm gonna stop there for now. I'm gonna continue on in the next video. Yeah, that's about it. So eschew, I did highlight a couple things, but eschew, 1 second. Eschew means deliberately avoid using or abstain from. That's a good word. So Or was it? And people who make more think they can eschew principles because of the quantity they are attaining. Also, basically it says that those who make more money feel like they don't need principles because of, or they deliberately avoid using the principles because they think that they don't need it. So yeah, that's how you use it. I'm gonna write it down. Deliberately avoid using or abstain from. Alright, got that down. Okay, so that's the end of this video. I'll see you again later. I'll continue on later tonight with the rest of the chapter.